And I think you could put those bigger challenges into three buckets. Do we understand our workforce from the lens of what skills they need to have? And the second one is, do we know what skills they actually have? What their strengths are, what their gaps are. And then do we have the learning resources to be able to bridge those gaps? And I think they're the big challenges. That's the holy grail for us to be able to identify those gaps and bridge them at the speed of business.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a nice time to move into the idea of skills, because when we talk about big, scary challenges, I get why this one is big and scary, because let's imagine you've got hundreds, thousands of people in the organization. Not only do you need to map the skills, you need to measure them, and you need to do it fast enough to put out some relevant resources or learning that helps people build the skills before the landscape changes. And you also need to do things like win stakeholders over, curate the content you need. It is a huge challenge, isn't it, to do it manually?
Whenever we speak to how L&D teams approach it now, right? Like on average, it takes them, from what we've heard from speaking to L&D professionals, it takes about 9 to 12 months. And that's a process of, speaking to subject matter experts, speaking to managers, asking them, what skills do you think your team has? What skills do you need for this particular job role? And every team and department often thinks they're special. So they've got their own special way of calling a skill that exists in every team, but they want it their way. I'm sure there are many people listening to this who probably experienced that. And so it's really hard to come up with a universal skills taxonomy. It's even harder to map that to all of the job roles that exist. And even when you map it, you might be able to say this person needs to have project management, but not everyone needs, let's say, a level 5 in project management, right? So what degree of proficiency do they need? And, a manager who's super busy with a lot of other things will come up with some arbitrary numbers to go, for this role, I think it's a 3. For this role, I think it's a 4. And all of that goes into a spreadsheet. It dies in a spreadsheet because, let's face it, no one wants to go back to that spreadsheet. It's not easy to use or apply. And then, whose job is it to keep it up to date? Because there are going to be new emerging skills for that particular job role. Who the hell is keeping on top of all of this data to keep it up to date? It's just not possible to do that at the speed and scale that's relevant for businesses to be able to, bridge those gaps. And so it doesn't surprise me that there are so many L&D teams that we speak to who they know they've got to kind of solve this challenge, but it's so hard. And, you almost find the challenge that it's kind of relatively easier for you to solve and kind of show that I've solved it. But to have impact, we need to be able to solve this challenge.
And the challenge is, if you do it manually, every time people come to ask you about it, you'll still be telling them, we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it. So you don't get to show any value. And like you say, if it goes and dies in a spreadsheet, then all of the work showed no value, short term, long term. So how do we overcome this? What is the way to actually map and measure the skills at the scale and speed required?
I think this is where, really we can leverage AI and generative AI to tap into this. And I think that's why we should really be wary around. Right now, we're underusing the potential of AI, right? We're using it for quite, short-term gains. I mean, this is a issue of our entire generation of instant gratification. We're using it to create content faster. It gives us that gratification. We've done something. We're doing it to automate routine tasks. But are we using it in a way where it's going to have that long-term benefit? That's probably what we're not seeing enough of. And so this is where we used HowNow AI to essentially solve that big challenge. And how we do that is by looking at combining real-time job market data. So looking at, what are the tasks and responsibilities associated with every job on the market, and then inferring what are the skills required and what are the proficiency levels required for someone to be able to do that task and responsibility. And what we get from that is a core skills taxonomy required for the jobs that are available in the market. We can also then contextualize that based on the jobs that exist within your organization. So we can plug into a HR system, look at what jobs you have, previous jobs people have, what responsibilities they have, and then infer what skills are required there. We then combine organizational context with job market macro data to come up with a skills taxonomy. Our skills taxonomy has just over 40,000 skills. If you're thinking that's quite exhaustive, damn right it is. And the reason why it is to cover Every industry, we've recently done this with, we had someone in the hospitality industry asking us for what skills would you map to a barista, all the way to someone who runs a tennis association, a golf association, and they were like, what skills do I need for a greenkeeper? All the way to pharmaceutical companies and technology companies are doing it. So it's quite a vast taxonomy. And then using the market data, we've also built the relationship between these skills, but also between the skills and the job roles and the required level. So what would have taken you on average 9 to 12 months, right? What we're able to do is in a matter of moments, able to generate that. Now, it's not just about efficiency. What this allows you to do is have a solid data foundation for the mapping that they're doing, because it's benchmarked against the wider market. But also what you benefit from is, because we're benchmarking you against the market, we can tell you when there's an emerging skill. So one of the data points we look at is, what are the patents that are being filed? What are the research papers that are being published, which gives us an indication of some of the potential emerging skills in every industry. And so as we start to see a skill go up in demand in the job market, or based on patents that are being filed, you can start to capture those movements in skill. So what you end up with is, rather than a static skills framework that lives and dies inside your spreadsheet, instead you have a dynamic skills framework that reflects your organization, benchmarks you against the market, and it's constantly evolving based on the changes that are happening in the market. And this is where you can really use AI to solve what was previously a very, very difficult challenge.